Lorenzo Patelli is an associate professor in the School of Accountancy here at the Daniels College of Business. He's been in the States for a couple of years. He's taught at the Benedictine College and previously taught at Erasmus University in the Netherlands, an outstanding business school in Europe. He earned his PhD from Università Bocconi in 2006. He has served as the editor of the Journal of International Business and as a reviewer for the Journal of Management and Governance, International Journal of Management Reviews, and European Accounting Review. So in spite of his youthful appearance, he's got some, probably some stripes on his back.
And age.
And he is a recipient of the 2008 Solomon's Prize for Management Accounting Research. I got interested in Lorenzo when I was looking at his bio on our website and found that he has done a lot of his recent research has been in the area of performance measurement and performance reporting. So I thought this was a good connection into this topic that we want to talk about. So together with his interest in his research on governance and performance reporting and obviously an expertise in accounting, I figured he was ideally positioned to help us talk about this issue and deal with it. So Lorenzo, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and I'd like to present to you Professor Lorenzo Patelli.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Dan, for inviting me. I'm really proud that I work for an institution that as an Institute for Enterprise Ethics, and I admire the commitment that all of you here have to ethical leadership and governance. Our school is named after Bill Daniels, who liked to say, those who have the skills, the dedication, and a solid foundation in ethics are the ones who succeed. I will humbly offer these opening remarks about short-termism and behavioral ethics with the hope that they can initiate a productive discussion among us. In order to describe what short-termism is, I would like to use an analogy that came to my mind while I was preparing for this. If you've ever been to Europe, especially Italy and France, you probably marvel at the cathedrals that were built over the centuries. Notre Dame, Reims, Milan, Siena. These cathedrals were studied from architects who sometimes never got to see the end result of their work. They employed thousands of workers. They were studied by architects and international teams of experts. They gave jobs to thousands of people, and huge investments and training were needed because every single construction was unique. I was reflecting on that, and I found it interesting that internationalization, innovation, employment, and formation are keywords that define the contemporary economic challenges. But it feels like some of the spirit of those times got lost over the centuries. In her book about the funding of the Cathedral of Milan, my college classmate and current assistant professor of medieval history at the University of Nebraska at Omaha reports a quote by a historian that tried to capture the awareness of those construction workers. Quote, "A man walked by the construction site of the Duomo of Milan and asked two workers what they are doing. The first worker answered, 'I am piling up bricks.' The answer of the second worker was, 'I am building a cathedral.'" End of quote. While the latter worker is empowered by the greatness of the ultimate goal he is contributing to, so much so that the definition of his job coincides with such a greatness, the former worker is a clear example of a short-termer, namely someone narrowly focused on short-term results and blind to the ultimate goal and its greatness. If you have never had the chance to visit Europe, you can just drive 6 hours northeast from here and marvel at the four granitic faces of President Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln and Mount Rushmore National Memorial. Someone might argue that four human beings don't deserve the same treatment that God deserves in the cathedrals, but that's secondary. What you can see in Mount Rushmore, as well as the European cathedrals, is the attempt to build something that lasts much longer than the architect himself and much greater than his own individual return. Short-termism is the opposite of this attempt. In business terms, we can define short-termism as the excessive focus on short-term results through myopic management of operation and manipulation of earnings. Myopic management consists of business decisions aimed at increasing, or at least not decreasing, income in the short term, such as cutting marketing, R&D, and discretionary expenses, or engaging in tactics such as procrastinating projects or anticipating shipments. These decisions are myopic, meaning that the decision maker is nearsighted because he or she can see the effect in the near future but cannot see the effect on long-term value. Manipulation of earnings, instead, is the exploitation of accounting discretion to represent a more favorable financial situation, such as the creation of budgetary slack and the abuse of accruals and reserves. Although both are corrosive of long-term value and unethical expressions of bad management, it has been shown that myopic management is much more detrimental than earnings management. Research shows that companies might enjoy some initial gain by engaging myopic management in the form of higher current income and stock price, exactly because of the inflated numbers, but they underperform companies by about 16% on average over a 4-year period. More strikingly, myopic companies underperform companies reporting negative earnings surprises by about 10% on average. Moreover, short-termism could lead into fraud, like the infamous case from Colorado of mini-scribe in the 80s, when in order to meet short-term revenues target, bricks were shipped instead of disk storage products, given the same size and weight, and then recalled from the customer at the beginning of the next period. Finally, short-termism could lead an entire sector into financial collapse, as in the case of mortgage-backed securities and collateralized default swap, which generated big bonuses for big bankers in the short term and double-digit unemployment rate for entire countries a few months later. The magnitude of the negative consequences of short-termism does matter. In my opinion, without a proper understanding of the magnitude of the problem, proposed solution will have a very weak effect or no impact at all. I remember when I realized that I was short-sighted, now I'm wearing contact lenses. Another word to say myopia, the fact that you can see close but not very far. I was 21 years old, and there was nothing more repulsive for my college age than having to wear a pair of glasses for the first time. A friend of mine was annoyed by the fact that I was keep copying off his notepad during class because I could not simply see what the teacher was writing on the board. Until a few months earlier, I would have disregarded any suggestion to do anything about my sight. Why? Simply because I was able to see near and far. As soon as my myopia became a problem because it hindered my ability to fully follow a lecture, I was willing to accept the cure. In my case, start wearing glasses. Behavioral research shows that we all overestimate our ability to do what is right. Hence, we act unethically without meaning to. An important step towards the overcoming of short-termism is reminding ourselves, our co-workers, our employees, managers, politicians, and society how harmful our natural impatience can be. According to Malcolm Salter, Professor Emeritus at Business Administration at Harvard Business School, short-termism has 3 sources: performance measurement system, the stock market, and the impatient self. Even though separating the effects of these 3 sources is not trivial, I would like to offer anecdotal evidence of how short-termism springs from these 3 sources. The first one is performance measurement system. Research findings on the pay for performance sensitivity depict a problematic scenario where the ratio of CEO pay to average workers is 500 to 1 in 2003, as reported in the book Pay Without Performance by Lucian Bebchuk and Jesse Fried. The same ratio was 140 to 1 in 1991 and 42 to 1 in 1980. The executive pay is just one of the sides of the complicated Rubik's Cube. In accounting, much has been done to show that unidimensional performance measurement systems are not forward-looking and budgetary control under certain conditions aggravates the unethical behavior of the organizations. The second source is the stock market. The stock market exercises great negative influence on management horizon through various mechanisms. According to many experts of short-termism, including the participants of the Business Roundtable, and we distributed that document containing their recommendation, the worst market mechanism producing short-termism is the practice of issuing quarterly earnings guidance. Firms issuing earnings guidance are found to invest less in R&D, manipulate earnings more aggressively, and report lower long-term growth rates. The equity holding composition signaled the presence of another incentive of short-termism. It estimated that $65 trillion, more than 1/3 of the world's financial assets, are owned by institutional investors such as hedge funds and pension funds. In the US, the ownership share of investment funds is estimated to be between 60 and 70%. A research by Mercer Consulting reported that the average annual portfolio turnover of these investment funds is 72% in a year. This evidence, coupled with statistics on the average holding period, which went from being 7 years in 1970 to 7 months in 2010, measures the great appetite for short-term results in the stock market. In this sense, a decrease in CEO tenure from 10 years in 1995 down to 6 years in 2011 is another sign of the same appetite. The last example I want to share regarding the stock market is the trading activity of TradeBy. As probably my accent already told you, I was not born in the United States. I'm from Italy, which is one of the countries in the world with the highest number of tourists per year. And I lived 4 years of my life in Kansas, the state with the lowest number of tourists per year. And so nobody can ever believe that I did that, but I did. And in Kansas City, there is this company called TradeBy, and I had the opportunity to visit them in 2009. As stated on its website, the company, quote, does not give advice, have customers, or manage money for others, end of quote. What a few powerful computers do for TradeBy, whose board of directors are 3 members, is analyze the market data through algorithms and send millions of limit orders into the market. The description of the website continues, quote, these limit orders often tighten the bid-ask spread paid by long-term investors. When the market data changes, our system recalculates the price we are willing to buy or sell at and adjust our limit orders in milliseconds, end of quote. TradeBy is an example of high-frequency traders, which nowadays trade a large portion of the overall market trading volume. From its office overlooking the Missouri River and cornfields, TradeBy accounts for over 5% of the total U.S. stock market daily trading volume and a much larger proportion of the Canadian stock market. While high-frequency traders made up the largest portion of trading volume, their investment horizon is very short, seconds for TradeBy. Finally, the last source of short-termism, according to Salter, is the impatient self. Human behavioral traits seem to accommodate external pressures for immediate gratification, and human beings find themselves easily forgetful of the real value of what they are able to achieve, like in example of the construction worker who says, I'm piling up bricks, instead he is building a cathedral. An instinctive, yet ultimately against our nature, impatience is linked to overborrowing, overspending, and overtrading, as pointed out by Marco Salter. This is a crucial point, and I will get back to this at the end of these remarks. The solutions proposed to cope with short-termism rest in the same 3 areas: performance measurement system, the stock market, and the impatient self. The bad news I am announcing today, probably with no surprise, is that the antidote to short-termism is yet to be found, and many questions remain, casting doubts on the effectiveness of some of the proposals. I would like to raise some of these questions to initiate our conversation and hear your opinion about them. I start with solutions that tackle the last source of short-termism, which is the impatient self. It seems very popular to invoke more regulation in order to constrain human behavior, given the bad consequences that sometimes it might cause. More disclosure requirements about executive compensation in proxy statements definitely have enriched the information available to investors and the public. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act has considerably increased the level of accountability and probably improved control systems. However, a very interesting study by Cohen, Day, and Liz showed that while accruals-based earnings management diminished after SOX, real activity-based earnings management increased, indicating a simple shift in the short-termism strategy. This empirical evidence is particularly worrisome because it highlights the tendency of gaming the systems once the rules are defined. So the questions are, can regulation prevent short-termism? And what characteristics must regulation possess in order to be an effective deterrent of short-termism? In particular, a regulation that has huge impact on investment decision is the tax code. In 2009, the Aspen Institute published a set of recommendations under the title Overcoming Short-Termism, including a call to revise capital gain tax rates and make them inversely proportional to the holding period. In addition, the Institute recommended the removal of caps on capital loss deductibility for very long-term holdings and a minimum holding period for granting voting rights. The President's proposal of significantly raising capital gain taxes seems to go in the opposite direction. However, we know that political agenda on taxation change every day, and sometimes we saw that last week, probably even over the course of a debate. The questions are, can a revision of capital gain tax rates create a more patient capital? What principles must the tax regime follow in order to discourage short-termism? The second set of solutions deals with the stock market. Great consensus exists among experts about the lack of justification for the practice of issuing earnings guidance. More debated are the suggestions regarding corporate governance. In 2011, Dominic Boyton, Global Managing Director of McKinsey & Company, invoked through an article on the Harvard Business Review a redefinition of the relationship between the number of shares and the number of votes. He wrote, quote, "Maybe it's time for new rules that would give greater weight to long-term owners, like the rule in some French company that gives 2 votes to shares held longer than a year." End of quote. A redefinition of shareholder democracy is seen by others as heresy of the faith in capitalism and the United States. A more ownership-based governance opens a discussion also on the role of independent directors and emphasizes the importance of effective board committee structures. The questions in this case are, can shareholder democracy be redefined? What elements must the board of directors have in order to keep short-termism under control? Lastly, for short-termism, performance measurement systems and compensations are key. Indeed, it's not how much you pay, but how, as said by the title of a seminal academic paper by Jensen and Murphy. The redesign of performance measurement system must include a wider measurement horizon and stronger ties to long-term value creation. Financial budgets should be based on realistic growth rates, and maybe certain companies might look beyond budget and operate without formalized financial targets. The questions in this case are, can financial targets and performance measures be used without promoting short-termism? How can better pay for performance be achieved? All these questions are definitely important, and I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. However, I would like to underline the role of leadership in defeating the tyranny of short-termism. More effective internal and external rules, stronger corporate governance, and more consistent compensation can contribute a great deal to facing short-termism. However, they are mechanisms, and mechanisms always produce limited results when applied to human behavior. It's like for my short-sightedness. It can be fixed by glasses because it is a physical problem. It is a malfunctioning mechanism of my body that can be fixed without another mechanism. Human behavior, for some part at least, it's not a mechanism. It can be fixed only through another human factor, that is, leadership. I will rely again on an anecdote to build my point in favor of leadership. At the end of the trading day of July 26th of this year, two NASDAQ companies reported opposite quarterly results. I quote from MarketWatch, quote, Amazon's quarter profit plunged 96% from the same period last year. Both earnings per share and revenue were below Wall Street view. The company also provided a weak outlook for its third quarter. Facebook adjusted earnings per share were in line with Wall Street view. Revenues improved 32% and were above the consensus estimate, end of quote. Despite their results, the next day Amazon stock gained 10% and Facebook lost 11%. This example is very intriguing to me because it shows that the market did not follow quarterly results. What did the market discount? Most likely, investors keep appreciating the long-term view of Amazon.com and expect great future results despite current below expectation performance. In contrast, investors are very concerned about the lack of long-term strategy for Facebook, notwithstanding the improving short-term profitability. This example shows how the market is surely capable to and does appreciate long-term investments. And interestingly, there is no empirical research that shows that managers are punished if they pursue long-term value, and no evidence that long-termism penalizes short-term results. In a world where the average holding period is 7 months and CEO turnover is about 6 years, Jeff Bezos started Amazon in 1994. And since then, he is the CEO and still owns about 20% of the stock of the company, which is valued at a multiple of almost 300 times the earnings. In order to start Amazon, Bezos quit his job at a hedge fund in New York City. The market has come to appreciate his vision and long-term horizon and keeps rewarding his leadership with lofty valuation. In June of this year, the Wall Street Journal reported that Bezos is building a, quote, 200-foot-tall clock designed to last millennia. He has financed a group, the Long Now Foundation, that is building what he calls the 10,000-year clock, deep inside a mountain on his West Texas property, end of quote. Bezos stated that, quote, the reason I'm doing it is that it's a symbol of long-term thinking and the idea of long-term responsibility. We humans have become so technologically sophisticated that in certain ways we are dangerous to ourselves. It's going to be increasingly important over time for humanity to take long-term views of its future, end of quote. Not a cathedral in this case, not a sculpture of a presidential face, simply a clock. Leadership is what is needed because short-termism is embedded in the organizational culture. As the Harvard Business Review article that we sent you today shows, myopic companies tend to persist in short-termism. Leadership is what is needed because it's nowadays clear, even to the hardcore economists, that human behavior is not solely driven by utilitarian rationality. A leader is what is needed to inspire to look far ahead, to carry the burden of current sacrifices to achieve great rewards in the future, to guide critical decisions towards long-term goals, and to always be mindful of the greatness of what human beings are meant to accomplish. Thank you very much.